my name is Tracey Cook, and welcome to the podcast series Victim to Victory. This series gives a voice to those that have overcome obstacles in all forms, that dare greatly to share their real stories. Amazing humans that have seen hope and risen above those adversities to become victorious, that now support and inspire others to do the same. We have got an amazing, inspiring, insightful, real, brave person that is changing the world, that is leading communities and has a different perspective that he's going to share with us, and an amazing story, an absolutely amazing story. His journey has been phenomenal. I'm going to share a little bit before we welcome him on to Victim to Victory, and his name is Justin C Kurtz. Welcome to Victim to Victory.
Thank you, Tracey. It's a great honor to be here this morning.
You're very welcome. And I appreciate you getting up. It's 5 a.m. While we're recording this. So we really appreciate having a global podcast and all of our guests really stepping into that. Now, imagine this guy, okay? And he's met John Maxwell and Dan Penner, traveled from Canada to Costa Rica, California, and the Caribbean. He moved over 40 times. Watched 99% of his friends die, starting at 19. Wow. Broke a wrist and back with no doctor's visit, walked 3,000 miles before 8th grade, was a competitive handgun shooter, professional model, and ran a successful coaching and real estate flipping business, built a sustainable off-grid cabin in full heart failure, unaware of a broken bat, with battery tools in 6 months using clay hand dug on site. Okay, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And working as a massage therapist now, ending his need for disability using capitalism. Absolutely amazing. This is just a little bit of the story, Justin, and I'm absolutely intrigued because I know how amazing and unique your story is, yet it's so relatable as well. So who is Justin, and where does your story start?
So it started with an ambulance ride, right? So when I was born, I was a Smurf. I was blue because I didn't have any oxygen, and my heart was congenitally deformed. So you got two pumps in your heart. One pumps to the body, one pumps to the lungs, and mine were backwards. So there was just a circular loop. There was no oxygenated blood getting into my bloodstream. So they, raced me to the hospital in an ambulance, and then they threw me in a helicopter because that didn't work, and flew me to another hospital. So my first day was travel. it was visiting new places and doing exciting things, and I think that just stuck. I didn't want to, when you have such a weird thing, especially, 1 in 100,000 kids are born with a similar heart defect. And, of that, not very many make it. And then when you see people pass away and you understand what death and mortality really mean, it kind of inspires you to do a lot more. Most people, unfortunately, wait till their 40s to realize I'm going to die someday. And I had the blessing of knowing it from day one. And I decided if I was going to live, I wanted to live a life that if somebody wrote a book, it would be worth reading. And so I had to fill that life with as much as I possibly could. And I just, for all the hard things, like how did I walk 3,000 miles before 8th grade? Well, I walked to school every day, and it was about a mile a day. And so mile there, mile back. So 2 miles a day, do the math, and it works out. And, rain, sleet, snow, shine, I did it. And I'm a boomer. I had to do it uphill both ways. So I lived at the top of the hill, and you went up and down, and, had to come back that same way. So it was a different life. I had this small town, still kind of the 1950s style growing up, a farm community, very tough, get the job done, I knew a gentleman who ran over his wife on the tractor, and that field still has to get plowed and crops in and whatever, So it was just one of those environments where if you hurt, you walk it off. So, somewhere along the line, I broke my back and broken a wrist and who knows what else at this point. And you just walk it off. So every day I had chest pain starting in about fifth grade, where, heart attack feeling, stabbing pains in your side. My arm would go a little numb. And that was around the time that we were really understanding heart disease. And so there was radio commercials all the time for heart drugs and what to do if you feel like you're having a heart attack. I'd be in there every day if I went in the hospital every time I felt like that. So it just made me a very tough individual, I guess, but not necessarily in a kind and loving way. So
resilient. Would you class yourself as resilient?
A lot of grit. Yeah, definitely a lot of grit. Because you still got to get to school. It doesn't matter that it's sleeting and freezing rain or whatever, and the buses are going to pass you, and you know where I'm going. But I had good parents that as much as they could introduce me to a world through competitive shooting and handgun competitions. That I met people from literally all over the world. We had biathlon training, and it was like kids racing bicycles and shooting air guns. And at the time, East and West Germany were still split up. And so I got to meet people from both sides of that, because they brought competitors over to compete in this international shooting event in my town of 1,500 people in the middle of cornfields. So it was pretty spectacular. Yeah. I got to meet just, the NBA level of professional shooting. And so come into that whole debate with a whole different perspective. And through those meetings, I got to work as a model and did professional modeling for a little while, basically as a kid, doing the weekly flyers for a retail store that isn't in business anymore. But that was my modeling years, and tried to expand that, but I never got tall enough. So that ended. And did the college thing like I was supposed to, but I didn't want to waste time because, again, I'm dying. I don't have time to waste. So I found a accelerated program and got my college done in about 2 years, and went out and started traveling for a company that sent me all over the country. Every 2 weeks to 6 months, I'd move somewhere different. Did that for quite a while, and then started riding motorcycles and trying to figure out how to be something other than bouncing around from town to town all the time. Then decided to be a Hells Angel and ride motorcycles and do the whole biker gang thing, and not really a gang, but the whole motorcycle club biker world, and added that to my list of things to accomplish. And then started having some more heart problems and had to have 2 more open heart surgeries, basically back to back. They'd been debating because I'd had a leaky valve for a long time, and that was what was causing a lot of the chest pain. And they said, well, we can try to fix that leak and see how you do. And 50% of the doctors didn't think I should do it, and 50% thought I should. So they had this big, surgical council, and they came back and said, well, we think you should decide. Thanks a lot. Right. So
we'll just leave it. We'll just leave it to you to decide.
Yeah.
Wow.
Forget about our expertise. So we're just as torn as you are. And
it's
interesting because I got this giant set of scars down my chest, and it's torn me in half my whole life. I've always had this desire to be this strong, masculine outdoorsman type person, but always had this defective heart. But emotionally, right, there's the physical actual pump that's in your body, heart, but then we talk about, they've got a lot of heart, that grit, that determination, whatever. I had plenty of that. I wasn't lacking in that department, but physically I was having some issues. So I decided to give it a shot. If I would feel better, that would be great. It'd be worth it. Even if it was just for a day of feeling like I didn't have that limitation, would be worth it. Maybe not. So I did that, and I felt awesome for a year, and just rode. And I remember packing a wheelbarrow full of concrete and just like feeling manly and normal, and went in for a checkup just to establish service because I'd moved. Big shock. And was down here in Arkansas the first time, and they're like, you're about to die. Like, we got to get you in for surgery soon. Your heart is about 4 times its normal size right now, and you're about to explode. So that was not what I was expecting to hear. So that changed things, and that's when I ended up with the mechanical valve. And in between those 2 open heart surgeries, I still had a lot of like rhythm issues, and so they ended up doing an 8-hour ablation surgery where they rewire your heart and scar it and do all this through your legs, and just all the tests and everything that they do to determine whether or not they want to even do the surgery and how to do the surgery, and sticking stuff down your throat and through your legs. And I had those little arteries at your groin cut open 4 or 5 times over the years. So back to where I had my second heart surgery, they decided that I didn't need to be in the club anymore because that just wasn't the lifestyle for somebody in my health condition. And right around that same time, I started having just real bad joint problems, and they diagnosed me with rheumatoid arthritis. And so I started doing all this healthcare stuff, and went for a sleep study. And I had sleep issues where I was waking up like 300 times a night because I could never sleep because I had a broken back. Which
300.
Yeah, like when they did the sleep study, like I never actually sleep. I haven't slept in I don't know how many years, probably since the last surgery, because I don't ever get into REM because my body wakes itself up in pain all the time because of what I've now learned is the broken back and just all the damage from being opened up for surgery. They don't ever send you for body therapy. They just send you for heart rehabilitation. Let's get your heart and these muscles maybe work back up in your chest, but they don't ever think about what they did to your back or your spine or your body. So I eventually had a chiropractor who traded some coaching and training and leadership stuff for chiropractic service, and he gave me way more than I gave him in value, because for the first time I had somebody admit that there was something wrong. Right, I was actually able to understand why I hurt. And the girl that did my intake, she actually cried because she's like, you shouldn't even be walking, let alone going around trying to encourage and coach and teach. So that was interesting to find out. So 75% of my back was in subluxation. So they did the spinal decompression and all that stuff, and missed the broken vertebrae at the bottom of my back in that process, but got to feeling a whole lot better, but was still having a lot of leg pain. Also found out I'd had a dislocated leg. So some point I dislocated my leg, and so I've been walking on that for 5-10 years, walking every day. My rehabilitation was to walk every day as much as I could through the woods and hike and find solace in the wilderness to rebuild myself, and found out that my leg was dislocated. It wasn't just that I was being weenie.
Justin, do you think that, I mean, just going back to your childhood, the tough kind of, I'll just walk it off, I don't worry about it, you're okay, just get on with it. Do you think that that upbringing when you're a child, that's why you're walking around for 5 or 10 years with a dislocated leg? Are you just kind of like, no, I'm not going to think about it, I'm just going to get on with it? Do you think that stems back from your childhood as well?
Well, just, pain was just an everyday part of life. So yeah, like with the heart stuff, I just had to walk it off. Like I'd be sitting here talking like I am now, and it might feel like somebody just took a spear and stabbed me right in the heart. And I have to keep functioning. You can't, melt down and have an issue every time. And so my message that I'll share at the end will kind of explain a little bit why. But yeah, I mean, and also money, the healthcare, it costs, and you got to go and go and go, and you got to convince them. Like it takes convincing when I have actual heart problems. Like I have to go beat the doctors over the head to find what's wrong, because I know my body, and I know when I don't feel right, and I know when I'm not up to par, and I know what I should be able to do physically, because I've done this a couple times now, doc, So I got married and had a kid right around after the second surgery. So, all the focus is on caring for people that were going to live, because I wasn't supposed to be here that long. And though they did tell me for the first time after my third heart surgery, when I went on disability, when I felt the worst I'd ever felt physically or emotionally at that point, that I'd live another 20 years. That was not, it was not good news at that time, because I was ready to get out of here when I went into the surgery. And, you know, you wake up, because there's always that risk you're not going to, and you wake back up, shit, I'm still here. So what do I do with that? And I didn't want to sit on the couch and watch Maury Povich and play video games and be a schlub. So I started thinking about, what can I do? Because can't didn't do shit, was what my dad always said. So I focused on being a can, because if I was going to have a child, I didn't want them seeing their dad just sitting on the couch. That wasn't the way to raise a kid. And I knew how to read. And I was like, well, I can start reading for myself. And when I really realized that I could be in control of my own education, like I could program my own computer brain, I didn't have to go to a school to have somebody else tell me what books to read. That was really just powerful. Like, I never thought that way before. I thought I was a genius just for coming up with that. And then stumbled into professional development and leadership, because when I was in the club, I was just kind of an ass and nobody really liked me. And I had no influence with people the way I wanted to. You know, I had a lot of people outside of my charter that respected me and saw me do what I did. But the people that interacted with me day to day, or most often, didn't as much, you know. So I came out of there with a couple of friends. But most of the people that I met that I became the most friends with were the ones that everybody else in the world thought were assholes too. So, you know, it was kind of interesting always, because they're like, oh, stay away from that guy, he's a real jerk. And then I'd be like, I love that guy. Me and him get along great. So,
well,
but it was a realization.
Always think that we see something in someone else that we see in ourselves, and we kind of mirror that, and we're kind of drawn towards that as well. So yeah, but I love it, Justin, how you know, like, you're just so real about your journey as well, and you're saying it so blasé, but it's powerful and it's an impactful, and you've had so much happen to you, not only health wise, but even for and you said it yourself, you know, an outdoorsy you know, a bloke, you know, that wants to really you know, not have this problem with his heart and just be, you know, the biggest man that he can. Then it's so brave for someone like yourself to step up, because not many men do, right? And say, hey, you know, this is what I want to be like, and this is what has held me back. And I was a bit of an ass for a while, but now I'm here. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think more than anything, men really need to hear those messages, because you know, they think that they have to be this big worldly blokey guy and save the day type of thing. And sometimes it's okay to go, you know what, I was a bit of an ass, and I kind of feel a bit vulnerable every now and again and wish I could be more, you know. Yeah. And no, I really appreciate that, because I think there's a lot of blokes that listen to this series as well, that really need to hear that from a bloke as well. So no, thanks for that. That's really a real great share.
Yeah, I definitely, as a man, you know, that was one of my biggest challenges, was what am I? When I lost my ability to work, I wasn't in a club anymore. I didn't have any social thing outside of myself. So, you know, I had no identity. And, you know, being a stay-at-home dad was not an identity that I really wanted to walk around doing, honestly. So it was really difficult to kill off that drill sergeant that I had in my head that beat me up every day. You know, that's just recently happened. So I haven't even got to, I've just been doing the past. I haven't even got to the present. So once I started living intentionally, I really started doing a lot. You know, I've been an Eagle Scout. I did a lot of stuff as a kid, but then after the third surgery, and I'm going to be a dad, I got real intentional. And that's when I started setting, like, if I live 20 years, I'm going to set some big, hairy, crazy goals, because I've never had 20 years. They've always just said, well, come back next year and we hope to see you, you know. And I was like, I'm going to change the world. Hell, if I can do all this and, you know, direct my own education, well, I'm going to start my own college, and I'm going to do all sorts of crazy stuff. And so that was kind of the ambition. Unfortunately, you know, I had to deal with the people around me not believing that I could do what I said I would do, despite seeing me do a lot of things that I wasn't supposed to be able to do. And that really held back and restricted a lot, but I still did a lot, you know. that was when I first set the idea of living more sustainably and just proving that I could do it. And if I could do it, then I could remove the excuses of everybody else. Because, you know, if a guy with bad hearts and, you know, bad body and was really not very intelligent when it comes to building or doing much of anything, honestly, because I always thought I was going to die. So you know, school was easy. I can pass tests and get a grade. That doesn't really take a lot of work, especially in a tiny town. If you just did your homework, they were so damn happy that you're going to get an A anyway. So, you know, but really doing things, I didn't really feel like I had a lot of skill or talent, because I always thought, well, I'll make money and pay someone else to do it, or I won't worry about it. You know, I'm not going to own a vehicle for 20 years or a house for 20 years. And now here I am having to worry about that again. So yeah, just identifying, well, what does it mean to be a man in today's modern world has been tough. That's been probably one of the biggest struggles since the last surgery and the last 15 years of life. You know, I did okay as a coach. You know, I made some money. I helped a lot of people. I gained some influence. I still struggle in that area. I'd like to be influencing more people and more direct about it, but prospecting and sales is not my forte. I'm a much better, especially just where I'm at in life, I'm much better just show up and let me do what I do. Being a massage therapist now is awesome, because that's considered an athletic performance to be able to be a massage therapist. So now I'm equivalent of the athletic performer at 43, when all my male counterparts, for the most part, have beer guts and diabetes and are starting to get heart problems. And I'm living my best life. I've built my house. I'm building another one. Did it with my bare hands, you know, literally mudded the walls with my hands, and still working on stuff, figuring everything out, because I didn't go and learn a whole lot from other people, because, you know, it's not, I don't know, I just like doing things the hard way, I guess, to, again, try to remove other people's excuses, because if I can do it, you can do it. And so what's your excuse?
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
People don't.
Yeah.
I have learned, you know, as you glow up and you do things, you know, the people you're around, they don't necessarily like it, because you remove their excuses. And I remove a lot of excuses for people. Like, you know, yeah, I understand back pain. I understand pain, physical. I understand emotional pain. Just got divorced last year. That's still tough. You know,
and you've got a 13-year-old son as well.
Yeah, got a 13-year-old son who is super duper smart and not near as ambitious and motivated as I would like him to be for his capabilities, and it drives me crazy. I hate video games, but totally understand being a kid and just wanting to play your video games. He has had to move 16 times, I think, and he's 13. So wow. It's really difficult to give that kid a hard time. He's pretty awesome. And he reads at a collegiate level and can do, you know, the mathematics he needs to do. Like, we sit around and we were at breakfast one morning and we calculated what his profit margins would be if he started selling a similar sandwich, and, you know, how much it would cost to make that sandwich and things like that. And so we just sit there and do stuff like that for fun. So,
but isn't that great that you can talk to your son like that, though, Justin? Like, you know what I mean? Like, your dad was, you know, like a hard ass, like he said, you know.
Yeah, and just not there. I mean, my dad worked on the road, so he was gone Sunday night till Friday night, and then he worked when he was home too. He was either crop dusting as a second job or shooting competitively, and so it was just a lot of, you know, you're just kind of there as a kid in those years. You know, nobody really wanted their kids around. They were all just kind of about doing what they wanted to do. And so I just always treated my son when he was born like he was an alien visiting the planet. It was up to me to help him figure out how to be a human, and didn't want to be dishonest with him or not, you know, share things, because, again, our generation, they just come out of, well, you don't talk about anything. You don't talk about feelings. You don't talk about emotions. You don't talk about sex. You don't talk about drugs. You don't talk about alcohol. You know, you don't talk about nothing. So I talk about everything. I remember making a poor kid cry because we're listening to the news and radio, and he asked about nuclear bombs or something, and I told him the truth about nuclear weapons and nuclear proliferation, and all of a sudden I'm just driving around and I look in the rear view mirror and that poor kid is just bawling his eyes out in the back seat. Why do people have to be so evil? And so it was a lesson in
so awesome to be honest with them, though. That's something that probably a generation ago there was no personal development books, there was no talking about, like you said, feelings.
My parents had nothing. Dr. Spock was it. That was the only book, and a lot of people misinterpreted that to be never tell your kids no. Well, that didn't mean never deny your kids anything. It meant redirect them to things that are better for them. So we use redirection all the time now. Johnny wants a candy bar. We'll say, well, how about this apple instead? That's all they were trying to talk about with that book. But most parents took it to mean, just tell them yes to everything they want. So yeah, it was definitely a different world. I don't have anything against what my parents did, what they could do with the information they had, and that's what bothers me today is we do have better information. Like I understand the brain development cycle, that my son's brain isn't going to be fully developed till he's 27, and that I'd be sure and remind him of that often. So don't make stupid decisions until your brain's fully developed, and don't impact your brain's potential by making decisions on drugs and alcohol and love and things of that nature until you get your brain right. Understanding where he is developmentally and being able to work with him as a human being rather than some tyrannical parent that just controls this other little version of myself to be who I want him to be.
For sure.
And especially as a dad, I think we struggle with our place as parents because society just has no place for us. Being a homeschool dad, like I was the only guy there always, just about. And so it was very awkward. And most people are like, oh, dads aren't capable. Yeah. I took my son on a 4,000-mile road trip to potty train. We drove from Missouri and we followed the Oregon Trail and went up through Nebraska and into the Yellowstone and visited a friend up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and then down through Idaho. We were supposed to go to California, and I had a buddy out there that was going to take us to Disney World and all that. And I was too big a coward to drive through the desert with a 2-year-old and heart disease, just in case something happened. So we cried all the way across Kansas and screamed for mom, and I don't blame him because it was really boring and really awful. So,
I love that how you said you potty trained him on the road. I love that.
That was the reason for the trip was you're going to learn how to do this, and you're going to do it in a car and learn how to communicate, because he learned real fast he didn't like going to the bathroom on the side of the road. And he learned to tell me, how to understand exits and things so that he could tell me, okay, I got to go, and we'd stop and we'd go every time. And so we just learned, and he learned how to communicate, and that was the end of that. So, and he was super easy to motivate as a kid. Like he had problems and there was always a fight getting dressed. And I'm like, all right, I tell you what, I'll take you to Legoland, which was like a big deal. Not very cheap to get in, whatever. So it was going to cost us a little bit of money. A week later, that kid was dressing himself and putting his shoes on, and no problem, because he had a goal in mind. So just finding that motivation for him has always worked. So right now, like if I told him I wanted him to do something and I bought him a gaming computer at the end of it, he'd probably do it. Now he may not play with that computer after 3 months, but he would work like hell to get it. So it's interesting, but yeah, that was a big thing.
Interesting as being a parent too, like just finding out that you can find out what their motivators are as well.
Yeah, right. Like he has a personality, and he was kind of born with the same personality profile as I did, and he has a love language like adults do, and just applying all that professional coworker behavior. Like you wouldn't treat your coworkers the way we treat our families a lot of times. So just trying to treat our loved ones like we worked with them. So
that's great advice. That's great advice. I might share this with my family sometime.
Yeah. We all need it, but sometimes we just forget because we get so comfortable in love we can abuse them. And I might love you, but I'd like to like you at the end of the day too.
That's right. Yeah, definitely. And tell us a little bit about meeting John Maxwell as well. How did that come about?
So I'd gotten involved with reading books and realizing that my story was a potential for financial success and to solve my problem of, well, who and what am I and why am I here? And started with a network marketing company, which was really good, but there's always things that come with network marketing that aren't so good. But coaching was just what I felt like I was drawn to do. And it was kind of before the craze of, everybody and their brother doing that. So I joined the program and I was one of the early founders. And so I got to go to Orlando and meet with John and ask questions directly. And so that was a phenomenal experience to be in a room full of those kind of people, just on the other side of meeting Sonny Barger, who's the head of the Hells Angel, and hanging out with him and getting to meet him and have him sign books. And then going to meet John Maxwell and have him sign books and ask both of them questions and see leadership from both perspectives too, because in the motorcycle club world, they're leading. There's some quote that I can't remember exactly that Sonny talks about in his book, but try to lead a whole bunch of alpha males with their own agenda, and they try to call us organized crime. Like, we have a hard time getting a picnic together because we all got our own ideas, we all got our own agenda, we all, we're all men with attitudes. So it was but it
so what would be the similarities,
John,
do you think, in leadership type of things?
I think it's all in the attitude of how you carry yourself and how you treat people. As a lowly guy on the totem pole, that man still remembered my name after meeting him a couple times. Sonny did. So this guy meets people all over, connects with people all over the world, and still remembers the little guy's name, right? So John Maxwell will teach you the same thing. Who's the janitor? What's their name? Do you know people's name? Can you remember it? Can you recall them? Can you make them feel like they're important? That, I think, would be one of the biggest similarities. And then just that, there is an energy and a persona to a good leader, right? Like, you can just see the body language and things change. They both lead international organizations of people that influence and have influence all over the world, and so the similarities of personality type are definitely there in what they do, but just two vast ends of what the world sees as the perspective. John's leading people specifically to go be leaders, to go add value to other people and to have influence and to do good things, but also to sell books and to put butts in seats at events and to make himself money. On the other hand, you got a guy that just likes riding motorcycles and likes connecting with other guys that like riding motorcycles, and they like to do it in a somewhat organized and fun and enthusiastic way together with other people who enjoy the same crazy lifestyle that they do. And, so very much the same people, but just different applications of the end result, which was influence. And so now we live in a world of influencers, and it was kind of interesting to looking back at that time when I was getting out of the club. I didn't have any influence, didn't understand what influence was. Facebook was a new thing. It was barely kicking off and people were just starting to talk about it. So all of the social media influence world didn't exist. But now here we are, where this platform, being on a podcast, I get to share my story with somebody that lives on the other side of the world and hopefully influence other people to be more and to do more and to accomplish more and to have more and to do it with the goal of, what if the world was a peaceful place and you had to live in a world of peace? What would you do every day? What if the world had plenty of food, which we do, plenty of water, which we do, plenty of shelter, which we do, and you didn't have to go pound pavement or whatever you do for work, what would you do with your time? I was blessed to kind of have that, freedom. That's one thing, I guess, in favor of like a universal income concept, would be that I had, because of disability, the ability to care for myself for the first time ever.
Wow, that's powerful. I felt
So
that, Justin. That's really
yeah,
powerful.
I did too, because I didn't realize that. So having to take a moment here.
Yeah, for sure. And they're really strong words too, because influence and power isn't necessarily about control. It's about how you do one thing, you do everything, right? And if
Yeah.
you treat people as though you want to be treated, I remember being on a very fancy yacht once, and lots and lots of very influential people on there. And one of the waiters spilt one of the plates on the floor and was so embarrassed. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm just gonna. And the guy who owns this massive yacht, like multi-millionaire, got up and helped him pick the food up off the floor. How you do one thing is how you do everything, and that's what that's your reputation. That's what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? That's your integrity. And I think we've lost that somewhere along the way, especially with
Character
social
doesn't mean what
media.
it used to.
Yeah, it's
Character doesn't mean.
just respect and integrity and what you're known for. Your word is your word. And before social media, kind of, and I'm glad you touched on it, because before social media, if you were to shake someone's hand, that was your word, right?
Yeah. Well, now you can't do that. You got a fist bump. Like, how am I supposed to teach my son to introduce himself and be a man in a world where we fist bump? Your handshake was a definer. Like, I knew you, especially like in the club world, was very much that way, because it was all about, are you a man? Like the comment, or your word is what defines you as a man. I was in a room one time with two massive. I'm 5'8", 5'9" on a good day. These guys were 6+, 300+ pounds. I'm 150. And they're like big ass knife in their hand, and what makes you a man? I can cut your balls off. Is that what makes you a man? It boils down to, do you do what you say you're going to do? And again, women can do the same thing, but that's the defining thing, because it's your character. It's who you say you are. That's what makes you that man. When you shake your hand and say, I'm going to do that, do you do it? I'm going to give it my absolute all. I may not accomplish it, but I'm sure going to stubbornly continue to pursue it as long as I feel like it's worth pursuing.
So. And you're changing a lot of lives now too. So you've got out of the coaching space, I believe.
Yeah, I keep trying to find a way to, sell and prospect online, and it takes money, and always disappointed with the web developers. I just had to fire somebody again trying to manage my website, and it's like, this isn't that complicated. I know, because my son can write code. Right? Like, so let's if you tell me you're gonna do updates, do the updates. Like, if I say I don't like this, and we all agree that this is the thing that we're going to do, then we should do that. But I'm still available to that through the buymeacoffee.com. It's kind of my Patreon-ish type website, so you can just send support, or if you really want me to coach and walk you through how to create a plan for your life and how to create a vision for your life. I'm really good at transformation. There's this great resignation going on right now. Everybody wants to find themselves. That's great, because I already found myself, and now I'm kind of bored with trying to help, because I worked so hard to try to get people to listen and let me show them what I was going through and doing, that now that I've really done it, really feel confident that it worked, I'm kind of like, I just don't want to do that now. I want to, everybody else is leaving their job. I kind of want to go get one. I've never been the just stable guy to live in the same house and go to a job and have influence in the community, go play music at the church and things of that nature, so I'm thinking maybe that's how I want to spend a few years. If I'm going to actually build my cabin and do all this work to be out there, then I might as well figure out how to stick around. So that's the first.
Well, I think there'd be lots of people wanting to know how to build their own cabins and live off grid. So I think you found your niche there.
Well, yeah, there's tons of people that can do it better than I can, but hopefully I can at least encourage those that think that they want to do it to just pull the trigger and go do it.
What a life. You've led an extraordinary life, Justin, and thank you so much for sharing your journey and being really upfront and honest about it as well. And I really hope that the blokes that listen to Victim to Victory especially will really take stock of all of that as well, because you are so real. And I learned a few more things about you during this interview as well, which is absolutely phenomenal. And I just, just can see bigger and better things, for you. What kind of message would you like to leave the audience on today?
Just the message from my dad that can't didn't do shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So be a can.
That's right. Don't be a can't.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Well played. Well played.
I think there's a t-shirt. That's got to be a t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for being brave to share your story, Justin. We'll be sharing where to connect with you as well. You're so appreciated. And you can find the Victim to Victory podcast series on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and our Facebook group. Please subscribe, share, and comment to help be the change that the world needs. Reach out and connect with Justin if he can help you in any way. He's very open and receptacle to that. So please connect with him, and let me leave you with a message of figure out who you are and do it on purpose. Thanks, Justin. Been a pleasure.